Welcome to Philosophy from the Frontline. This podcast explores the intersection of philosophy, entrepreneurship, and veteran transition. Join us as we delve into the minds of successful entrepreneurs who have made the journey from military service into small business ownership. Our guests will share their insights, experience, and unique perspectives on life, business, and the world around us. Through deep conversations and thought-provoking discussions, we hope to inspire and empower our listeners to tackle their own challenges and achieve their dreams. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the world of entrepreneurship from a veteran's point of view. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Philosophy from the Frontline. This is episode number 84. This person that's going to be on the show today does not need an introduction to me, and if you followed some of my other work before this one, you'll know who Bob Burton is. However, Bob is now the director of the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, or DEFTECH. But lots of things to talk about. Bob is a superstar, so if you are not following him on LinkedIn, you should, because he is a mover and a shaker in the innovation community, not just in North Carolina, but at the national level as well. He has a lot of connectivity throughout the innovation ecosystem in the United States, with a particular focus in bringing some of those capabilities to North Carolina. But regardless of that, Bob is a good person to know. He's a believer. He is a believer in technology. He's a believer in Jesus Christ. And at the end of the day, he can breathe some well-needed motivation and life into any conversation that you have. And that's why we have him here today. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to Bob to give himself a quick intro. But thanks again for being on the show today.
Awesome, Rob. Well, you definitely bring the fire and set the example and put the bar of motivation high. So I'm just trying to clear that bar every day, but that's the point in community and having friends is we do push each other. We do challenge. We do encourage. And hey, sometimes we pick the other person up and you buddy carry them based on what your day looks like, your stage in life, or what's happening. But anyways, I'm Bob Burton. I serve as the Defense Technology Transition Office, or DEFTECH Director, underneath the Military Business Center. If you don't know what a DEFTECH or a Military Business Center is, it's okay. North Carolina is the only state that funds professional business development assistance for our small businesses, universities, and academics to pull together frontline technologies through tech scouting or even business development consulting, construction, textiles, medical, whatever you have, whatever DoD buys or needs to solve warfighting challenges, we provide those services here in North Carolina for no cost. But my background and kind of my passion and my why, I'll kind of start with my why. My why is to never send our warfighters into a fair fight, but to ensure technological overmatch against all adversaries, and through leadership, provide a sustainable and competitive advantage against current threats and positioning and posturing for future threats. So you might have noticed some of the key words in there: technology, leadership. I could throw in there innovation. All those work together to provide a competitive advantage for our frontline troops. My background is special operations, retired in 2019 as a U.S. Army Special Forces Command Sergeant Major with a variety of assignments and deployments and combat deployments, but most recently retired out of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, or USASOC, and 1st Special Forces Command, or 1st SFC, working in requirements generation, science and technology, futures and concepts, which I now bring to bear and scale for the state of North Carolina to get left of the requirement into the problem space, so that we can scout and find those transformational technologies to hold to my promise. Everyone's got a promise. My question is, are we holding to it? Again, my promise is to never send our warfighters into a fair fight. So anyways, yeah, really glad to be here, Rob, and it's an honor to be on your show.
Yeah, that's good to know. And one of the things that you said is technological overmatch. That's essentially the thrust of everything that you do every day. And it's lost on people that have not fought the old war. And I hate to say it that way, but like if you go back in time and you think about the folks that were, commissioned during the Cold War era, whether that be from like 1960 until the end of the 90s, there was a lot of capability that was thrown towards the military for the peer-to-peer fight. Like everyone was afraid of like Russia. Like we had an existential threat in communist Russia that we were concerned with. So a lot of our warfighting apparatus was focused in on defeating that particular threat. And so we had a lot of technological overmatch. And when you look at the technology that came out of it, out of the Cold War, you got the M1 tank and the Bradley and, multiple improvements on the Apache helicopter and all these other things that kind of happen, those evolutions that happen very, very quickly. But I would say today's military is in a revolution rather than evolution. And there's a difference between those two things. Evolution is something that is like, hey, look, we went from bows and arrows to machine guns. At the end of the day, those are still projectile weapons. There's the game-changing innovation that happened just made the projectiles move faster and more accurately. Whereas today, the revolution is the Internet of Things, which is something that has been brought to the battlefield that completely changes the way that we do business, and not everybody has knowledge of it. And so that's the difference. So an evolution is something that everybody kind of understands and just builds off of, whereas a revolution is, okay, there's pockets of excellence in different places, but no one has mastered it yet. And that's the scary part. But without getting into a deep dive on technology, let's talk about your transition out of the military. So you spent some time, in the Special Forces community, which is a very unique community in and of itself as far as the mission is concerned, particularly given the 20 years of the global war on terrorism, because that mission changed even more dynamically than what it previously was, again, in the 80s and 90s. So, ultimately, how, what made you, answer the call to, take the uniform off, but still continue to help soldiers in the sense that you do working for DEFTECH?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, life is a series of seasons. Some seasons are chosen for you. Some seasons are just have time limits. And for me, it was really just that time limit. I was right at 30 years and really was just fortunate enough, to be able to spend the last handful of years, really kind of home, supporting the frontline troops, because I had to get plugged back in with my family. Things were not going well, struggles with mental health and household, kids just lacking that relationship piece. So yeah, I had to make that commitment, and that's what led me kind of back to Fort Bragg on my then Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, kind of to my final assignment and final few years. But I couldn't give up the hard jobs. Stayed jump master, qualified, putting war fighters out of aircraft, and just supporting from the staff level, representing war fighters. And that's really where I came up with that promise. And I hold that promise, is to never send our folks into that fair fight. And other people say it, but I'm like, okay, well, look at the fruit. What are you doing to position yourself to ensure that vision, that why becomes a reality? Kind of as I was getting out at 30 years, I transitioned. I became a business coach with the John Maxwell team. And as a business coach, started my own business. I always heard, hey, you should start your own business. Start your own business. That advice is very sound. It gives you a lot more options. But I kind of tweaked my why just a little bit, and now it became a much larger. Never send the next generation into their future unprepared. So that's where the mentoring and coaching and development comes in. And then, of course, technology integration. So at the state level, with DEFTECH, I get to merge all of that together, working in the STEM space. We're looking to advance or integrate high school students. We're seeing a shift out of the universities, even community colleges, and left into the STEM in order to inspire the next generation of STEM leaders across the nation. And part of technology transition is I want the next generation to own these wicked problems that we're facing today. Whether it's swarming and teaming, what is AI and large language models look like on the battlefield. Of course, you mentioned the Internet of Things and all of those unmanned systems and human-machine interface and all that we're going to face. Because adversaries, quite frankly, are integrating these technologies rapidly. And if we're not preparing left of bank in the shaping phase, this next generation, then we're already behind. So yeah, it's kind of a holistic approach, Rob. And like I said, I took off the uniform, but I still get to serve at the state level, working with federal partners, state partners, academic partners, and even down to the community college and into the high school. So really, for me, it's my sweet spot, and I'm really glad that I am where I am.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you alluded to it, and a lot of people don't consider this. And one of the things that we talk about is legacy. And as a military leader, your legacy is really what you leave behind, and then the potential for them to grow and do bigger and better things for the organization. And that's what, regardless of where you are, whether that's your job, whether that's your service, whether that, like if you even if you were a manager at a fast food restaurant. Right? Are you setting the people that work for you up for success so they can move on to bigger and better things in their future? And coaching is part of that. And sometimes, particularly when dealing with the DoD, it's very, very difficult because the language of a small business or the language of an academic institution is not the same language as, the Department of Defense. So, credit to you being able to speak multiple languages, not just as a special operations guy, but as a communicator in the business space, because again, understanding how to address something that a small business owner is concerned about, but they don't know how to relay that to their clients is huge. And there's a lot of people that don't have that skill. And so being able to connect with somebody that does will allow you to further your opportunity. And even if you don't further your opportunity, you may make a friend or add someone to your network that will allow you to spin into other better and greater things. So we've talked about what you're doing now, which is really good. So we already know that. But again, what was your hardest part about separating from the military? Because I know like everybody's transition is unique to them. It's just like your DNA. There are some broad strokes that everybody has to do. You have to go through SFL TAP. You have to, make sure you have a resume done. You have to do all those things to, hit that congressionally mandated 98% success rate for SFL TAP. But what were some of the things that you ended up doing before you transitioned out? Because I know like we had similar paths when we were walking out the door, because there were some resources that we both used. But for the people in the audience that don't talk about them or don't know about them, what was hard, and then what resources did you use to overcome that transitional point as you were leaving?
Yeah, I think that's an important point to discuss. I'll pull together a couple of different ideas. Transition starts long before your ETS or retirement date. And there's calendars out there. You can get them off of LinkedIn and other folks. There's a lot of communities out there. You got to find one and build one that works for you. For me, my transition was, I want to start with a servant's heart. It's okay, God, one, you've got me on assignment here. One assignment is ending, one season. What is my next assignment? What's my next season? So I started exploration. You have to have curiosity in order, especially for transition. You got to have a plan, but you also got to have curiosity. At about the 1 year out mark, I started working with NC State University on a program called Hacking for Defense. It had been stood up at Tommy Sowers had stood one up at Duke, but NC State didn't have one. So I was working with Bull Holland on that. We got it launched. But one thing I learned, you mentioned about being hard, I'm going to tie it all together, was as an executive in residence for the Hacking for Defense program, was the ability to continue to serve. I saw a pathway transition. Even though I was taking the uniform off, I still had value to add to the next generation. In this case, they were master's level and even some graduate level students in a business course solving wicked defense problems using the lean startup methodology. I think probably the hardest thing is not knowing what you're going to do. In some cases, not even having your identity anymore. Not that your identity should be tied to your rank or anything else or the organization you're from. Your identity has to come from something bigger than you. And for me, that something bigger, someone bigger is God. So, okay, God, where do you want me and what role? So what was hard was the mission. Okay, so you had to find a new mission, a new team, a new tribe, a new community. So I slowly just started stepping out, doing some of the things that I'd always done, just joining different forums, different discussions, different networking groups, do all of the above. You don't know which one is going to yield the fruit. But one thing that I did, and I want to recommend a book. It's called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I tell folks I transitioned to like a startup. Matter of fact, I do a lot of things like a startup. What does that mean? There's an iterative process to success. There's something called the MVP, or the minimum viable product, that you have to produce in order to test evaluate, and then potentially iterate whatever product or service that you're trying to provide. So even though you're transitioning, the product and service was me. I was the product. What value do I add? So continuous learning. Finished up my master's degree with Liberty University, master's in executive leadership, which then led to my coaching business, getting that launched in leadership, speed reading and memory skills, Speed Leaders Solutions here in Raleigh. So, okay, how can I take all of this to add value? So I continued to work with the military, work with NC State with this Hacking for Defense. I said, okay, what's the next level? Where can I take this? And I noticed everything was about problem solving. So it's okay. The job didn't exist, but I stayed plugged into DEFTECH in the Military Business Center. And there was a job opening probably about 6 or 8 months after I got out, because I had, my wife's like, you have to get out of the house. You have to do something. And then for my own mental health, she was right. I had to do something. So don't delay. Find a job, get into something quick. You may not stay there. Your average veteran will transition. I believe it's 3 times within the first year. And that's okay. That's okay. So I did that. But anyways, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But like I said, transition like a startup, have a plan, read that book, and take an iterative approach, because where you land the first time, it may not be where you're going to be in 5 years, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great points, particularly when you're talking transition story, is how turnover affects veterans. It's completely different, and it's difficult too, because we're so used to, the 18-month cycle. Like if I don't like my boss, I just wait 18 months. If my boss doesn't like me, I just wait 18 months. One of the two of us will leave, and that's one of the benefits of the military, is that people consistently change over. And so, planting yourself in an area or planting yourself in a unit is not something that happens where people stay for years and years and years. Even in special operations, the personalities change, the leadership changes. And so you can be in an environment that you really, really enjoy for 18 to 36 month period. And then all of a sudden a new leader comes in with a different attitude and different perspective. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it may not fit with your personality and makes it more difficult. And that's one of the things that as you transition, you're taking the uniform off, understanding like, hey, look, do you want a job or you do want a career? And I think that's one of the difficult questions that you have to ask yourself as you're transitioning out. Because if you just want a job, like you could go be a people greeter at Walmart or go work at, Lowe's or Home Depot, because they're always looking to hire military veterans, and those are great jobs. And those are jobs. There's not are there career progression tracks within those organizations? Yes, but you don't have to choose to take them. You know what I mean? Whereas in the military, you're inherently forced to become a leader or you're going to get run out. And so it's a difference in that. And so it's like, do I want a job or do I want a career? If I just want a job, hey, it goes back to the point that you said, you could start your own small business. As long as that small business has a niche and can bring in enough money to make you happy or meet your family's needs, then stick with that. If not, then you start looking for other opportunities. And I've said this, and you've heard me say this, and I will say this and continue to beat that drum to death, is once you make staff sergeant, start an LLC. It's $200 a year that you could write off on your taxes, start your LLC. And even if it's just Rob Robinson LLC, for the rest of your life, you will be a business owner. And then you can utilize that and the tax breaks and some of the things that you can do to advantage yourself, because you are a business owner, and some people take that to the bare minimum and like, hey, I just want to be a business owner. And they run around like, I'm a small business owner. All right, that's cool. But other people use it to tap into their fullest potential. And so there's a balance there that is definitely required. So you've recently transitioned because, when we worked together, you were the senior director or senior manager at DEFTECH, but now you are the director. And you've had some unique experiences, particularly just, hiring new people. But as you're transitioning into that new position, like what was the hardest part about what you're doing now? Because, sometimes it's easy to be the worker bee. I don't want to say that you're a worker bee, but, sometimes it's easier just to manage your own lane than it is to manage an organization. And so there's lots of responsibilities that come with that. But what do you find yourself doing differently or better, or an area that you think that you may want to improve on just because like things have changed so dynamically in the last few weeks?
I appreciate that. I just want to pull a thread that you were talking about. We have to make a decision whether we're going to be employed or deployed. And am I looking for an opportunity or am I looking for impact? And as a special operations leader, as a warfighter, as an entrepreneur, as an American soldier, I was always looking to make impact. So when the state position came open in 2020, you mentioned about get a job. Hey, I worked at Office Depot for a little while. It was great. I wanted to make a impact in my local community, and that was great. So when the state position opened again, did that for about 4 years on a defense technology transition, doing tech transition, working with government agencies, small businesses, and a lot of folks across the state, across different universities. I said, this is awesome. I mean, probably the best job on the planet. So when the opportunity came to step up to be the interim director, well, one, it was a great opportunity to step up and have more responsibility. However, it was just me. So now the workload increases, the stress increases, the friction at home increases. And even the hard part of that was, can I offer the same services to companies and the warfighters? So it meant a lot of late hours, early mornings. And then I had to develop some new disciplines. Again, it goes back to the different seasons. But in January of this year, became the interim director, and then effective 1 June became the director of the Defense Technology Transition Office. I think the question was, what was difficult in that transition? It's almost like starting over. Anytime you move up into a new position, you have to build new processes. You have to determine new efficiencies. I mentioned the word disciplines. So I started using new tools, started reading more, started networking, outreaching more. You know me, I was barely even on LinkedIn. And I started flooding LinkedIn. So I was like, wait a minute, I need an outlet. I need a mechanism to tell the story of the warfighter and to tell the story of our great state of North Carolina. So I hate to say it, but I found LinkedIn as kind of that methodology, and find a way to honor my family, especially in the midst of, increased responsibilities, while still making an impact. And I think you mentioned at the beginning, I appreciate that, kind of a nationwide impact. I wouldn't even dare say a global impact, because anything we post on social media, I've got folks that I'm looking from around the world that are connecting or reading or reviewing. And you can look at the analytics and the statistics, which is really interesting. And I was like, okay, am I really reaching the right community that augments or supplements my professional work, as a state employee? But anyways, yes, the hard part is really just building the new processes, and swallowing my pride. Rob, you and I have had many phone calls, and I've had many phone calls with other folks. You need a support network. Don't go it alone, because with those new increased stressors, there's new mental health challenges, and I'll just be transparent on that. So you got to have folks you can reach out to and just say, hey, I'm having a hard time with this. Let me run this by you. Just don't have a team to do it. It's just me. Even though I work for a great organization, I am still currently the only person doing tech transition. However, as we discussed, we are building the team. We're looking at some new hires, and we're really going to take this thing called defense technology transition to the next level. Ultimately, Rob, I just want to finish up with this last thought. I think we can solve more problems, more wicked problems together as a community, and with our strong team that we're building here in DEFTECH to better serve the warfighter, our state of North Carolina, and ultimately to grow the defense economy and meet the emerging warfighter needs. Because the world is only getting more and more VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's not going away. It's only getting worse. So we either adapt or die. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And like I said, it's tremendous to see the amount of activity in LinkedIn, because it's like Bob used to fly under the radar for so many years of, the occasional post, but the stuff that you're posting is very inspirational, man. And I say that because, you're doing things with your kids, and there's not a lot of, just to be honest, there's an absence of parents' involvement in their children's lives in today's society. So for you to be able to do that, that's a tremendous thing. That is huge. And it gives them, and your kids will never say it. It's just like your kids don't ever listen when you tell them that they're good kids until somebody else outside of the family says your children are good children. And they're like, oh, see, Dad, they like me because they think I'm doing a good job. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way that it is. But even if they don't openly admit it, the inspiration that comes from being able to do something with their parents of substance is tremendous. And so I think that's one of the greatest opportunities that you've been afforded, not only, in your retirement, but also in your opportunity that you're currently in. So we've been to a couple of events together where your kids have been able to attend, and that's huge because it goes back to the legacy thing, but it also gives them the opportunity to be inspired, and sometimes and sometimes one of the I won't say a significant shortfall, but one of the shortfalls in our society is people don't want to be inspirational to the people that are closest to them. Like I want to have this huge, social media following. I want all the likes and retweets and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, the people that are closest to you should matter the most, and so should their opinions. And so I think that there's just something to be said about, a person that's willing to take their time. You spent 30 years in the uniform. It is quite easy if you wanted to, if you chose to, is to not be involved with anyone.
All right.
You're like, hey, I'm retiring. I'm moving to Montana where land is cheap, and I'm just going to stay out there. It's very easy to do that. And, I appreciate what you've done. One of the things that we didn't say, and we used to say it all the time, is your network is your net worth. So again, Bob is a mover and shaker in the community. He has lots of ties to everybody in the digital footprint in the state of North Carolina. And if you need help, DEFTECH is available for you. Like, it's not, it is encouraged that we focus on North Carolina, but some of those wicked problems that Bob has presented are not going to be solved with the companies in the state. It's just not going to happen. There are things, there's expertise all over the world. Like if I was trying to solve legitimately a biomedical problem, North Carolina is probably it. Like we are top shelf every year in that equity in the states or in the country. But if I'm trying to find a software designer or a person that can write AI ML, you may want to go to Silicon Valley. Are there people doing it here? Yes. But where are those people trained? Silicon Valley. So, it helps to have a network that's pretty expansive. But we'll wrap this thing up because we're getting close to the half hour mark. But the other part of it is you already mentioned the Lean Startup book as a tool that you used as you were getting started. But any other books or anything else that you would recommend our transitioning service members or anybody that's just leaving out of a job or a transition in office like you just had from a, middle management position to a director's position? Is there any additional tools that you would recommend for anybody that would be out there listening?
Yeah, I guess, again, another really good point, and I probably should have said this as first, is the Bible. I've been reading through Proverbs. I mean, there's so much wisdom in the Word of God. Read the Bible. And also another one is Dale Carnegie's, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Any business is a people business. If you don't understand business, you will not be. If you don't understand people, you will not be effective in business. You don't have to have an MBA or master's degree and all that stuff to be influential with people. You just got to care. You just got to get out of your own way. You just got to be personable, likable, empathetic, and things like that. And don't go it alone. So, yeah, I mentioned before that I'm the only person doing tech transition. I'm a one-man shop. Yes. However, there's a massive team across the state of North Carolina, and even you mentioned nationally, that help and who share that vision. So link up with folks who have a big vision, a big dream, and move forward together. And I'll just kind of close this one part. I'm actually down in Alabama right now. My daughter's going to space camp, and I had an opportunity. I went and met with some companies, and I'm actually going to bring some of the resources back to North Carolina at our upcoming Federal Technology Symposium, which is August 6th, 2024, at FTCC, or Fayetteville Tech Community College, because we're seeing a transition, a requirement in a lot of the RFPs or requests for proposals for model-based system engineering approaches. So digital twinning and things like that is a requirement. So staying up with the requirements, getting linked up with a group of change agents, and just doing something that's bigger than yourself, and then get out of your own way, give yourself permission to fail, but also give yourself permission to succeed. So hopefully that's helpful. But again, I just want to bring it back to my faith. You got to have faith in yourself, faith in God, and faith in others. They may let you down, but it's okay. Still have faith in them, encourage them, build them up, and shoot for the stars,
Yeah. Wow, this was awesome. Tremendous conversation. Like I said, we've never really talked like this way. We've talked in lots of other different manners, but we've never really talked about, what you went through on your way out the door of the military. And again, it's important because, people always think that as a senior enlisted person, like you're never going to end up in that directorship job, Oh, well, you're told that. People tell you that all the time. Well, you're never going to get hired to be an executive because of X, Y, or Z, which is not the case. The reality of it is yes, there are people that are advantaged. Like if you have stars on your shoulder when you leave the military, yes, the transition into the corporate environment is slightly easier for some. But the reality of it is we have been connected with a community of all different types of people that have seen success based on purely grit and hard work. Like if you are willing to put the work in, you can be successful. But without further ado, we're going to wrap this thing up. Bob, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Yeah.
Thank you.
We will package this thing up. And hey, for those of you guys that did not listen to the Bull Holland episode, I'm going to repackage that as part of this. So I'll put it in the podcast description. There'll be links to all the books. We'll put a link to Bob's speed reading company as well in there. So if you have any questions, we'll put Bob's LinkedIn in there. So I hope that you will connect with him and just have a discussion. And as always, and I will plug this for him because he didn't mention it, but every Friday in North Carolina for the last 3 years, going on 4 years. 4 years going on 5. Bob has hosted the DEFTECH Coffee Call. And the DEFTECH Coffee Call is essentially an open forum for technologists, academic people, and government folks to come together and discuss ideas over coffee. And you literally have the opportunity to connect with other people that may be useful in your ecosystem, or just somebody that you need to or want to talk to and figure out some of those wicked problems and help the warfighter on the back end.
Yeah. Can I just make one final comment, Rob? Just want to honor what you're doing here. Yeah. I just want to honor what you're doing here on this platform and just, kind of pulling these stories out. I mentioned at the beginning, say, hey, I'm not ready for this. And you're like, yes, you are. Because everyone's got a story and you provide a platform to help let people tell their story. We need to connect with our story. It's really important because our story is who we are. So again, I just honor what you're doing here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bob. And again, hey, everybody, this has been episode number 84 of Philosophy from the Frontline. This has been Rob and Bob Burton from the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, or DEFTECH, and we will see you on the high ground. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Philosophy from the Frontline with Rob Robinson. We will bring you more interesting veteran transition stories, veteran advocacy, and more information in veterans transition in general on a podcast platform near you. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Thanks.